Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the iCow Soil Advocacy Forum. I am delighted to have Paul Thungu take us through our session today, a past iCow soil advocate, student, and now a certified iCow soil lab technician. Paul will be talking to us about compost, and he'll be sharing with us some of the innovative machinery that he has built to serve his clients with compost and vermi extracts.
I am a farmer, that is a regenerative farmer at that. And I also run a startup that is a soil revolution, where I help, I work with farmers to restore soil and basically make the transition from what we have come to refer to as the conventional farming into a more regenerative way of doing the farming. I am also an iCow certified Lab Tech. And I've just shared on that screen my contact, phone number, and email for anyone who would like to reach out. You're most welcome. So compost teas and extracts. Well, we start out with defining what these are. Basically, we are working with biology. So these are biological inoculants in liquid form. So that really helps in enhancing the efficiency of putting them out. And it also makes it very cost effective. The amount of material that you require to do a parcel of land can be stretched out so that you do not need to put out so much compost. And when you're thinking of it, or when you're thinking of applying on large fields, then it becomes a very important tool. So in that regard, basically teas and extracts are both liquid amendments for the soil and plant surfaces. There is a difference when it comes to extracts and teas. And basically the major differences are, when you're doing an extract, you end up with the organisms that you're able to strip off the material and onto the water. So you're not growing, you're not multiplying, you're basically just stripping off. So that means you may require a lot more material than perhaps when doing compost tea. So on the other hand, a compost tea will multiply and grow the organisms during the brewing process. And mostly the organisms that will grow most rapidly are bacteria and fungi. So we'll come also to see how to grow particular organisms, if that is what we are interested in. So the processes are different, and also there is a presence of foods when you're doing teas, and when you're doing extracts, you do not require to use the foods, although you may use them at the end of the process when you're putting them out. We'll have a look at what some of those foods are. So an extract basically takes a shorter time, is a short process. Within a few minutes, you could complete a batch. You do not need to use specialized equipment to do compost extracts. Although in some instances where you need very large volumes, it may become necessary to have some kind of equipments. We'll also have a look at what some of those equipments look like. Teas, on the other hand, typically brewed to 40 hours. That will be determined by what you are trying to grow, what the ambient temperatures are, and basically, as we have noted, teas require to use a specialized equipment. So you will have a pump and some kind of a container or tank to hold your water. You will be aerating the system with added foods so that you're constantly supplying oxygen as your organisms grow. Yeah, the point that you just noted, extracts do not require foods since we are not trying to grow the organisms. However, when putting out the extracts, you can add foods just before application. Compost teas require foods for the organisms. You are trying to grow them, they will need to feed, and you will also need to keep the system aerated so that it stays aerobic. So teas will end up with significantly higher populations of organisms than extracts. However, extracts will have a higher diversity. So when it comes to application, extracts are mainly used as soil amendments or soil applications. So use them to drench and inject into the soil. They can also be sprayed on plants, but in most instances, the recommendation is that extracts are used on soil. Compost is applied as foliar applications, so on plant leaf surfaces, on fruits and stems of the plants. You can use the extracts to treat your seeds and seedlings, and you can use, or that is dressing. You can also apply in furrow, either with a sprayer or basically a drench. After harvesting of annual plants, an application of extracts will also help to speed up breakdown of whatever residue that has been left behind. Yeah, compost is basically applied on annuals at first true leaf and at monthly intervals for maintenance. On perennials, you apply them at bud soil. So when basically your trees or your plants are starting to flower, and also monthly intervals for maintenance on perennials as well. So they have different shelf lives as well. Extracts can normally keep for a few days, although there has been some suggestions in some quarters that they can keep for longer. I've not been able to verify that, but there are some people who suggest that they can actually keep for months. I don't know, without going anaerobic. That is something that we probably will need to check. With compost teas, once they are ready, they will need to be used within a few hours, 3 to 4 hours. you will need to have put it out. So you will not keep teas because the biology is very active in those teas. They will consume the oxygen very rapidly, and things will start going anaerobic pretty fast. So that is another major distinction between the two. It is important to note the quality of water that we use to make these amendments. So you do not need water that is treated with disinfectants, or in case you have water that has chlorine, you will need to let that sit out for at least 24 hours so that it can gas off those chemicals. You can also use, basically you can use some humic acid also to complex some of those chemicals, and before you use it to make your amendments. Collecting rainwater is the best. It really improves the efficacy of the biology. It does not kill the biology, so rainwater is the best to use for these biological amendments. Compost quality will also be very crucial in determining the quality of your liquid amendments. So as you are learning how to do your bio-complete compost, you will come to appreciate that composts can be quite different, and those will determine outcomes. So it is really important that you keep in mind, or you maintain the proper practice for making your compost. So high quality liquid amendments will give you a very high return on investments, because basically you're stretching very little to go a very long way. So emphasis on compost quality and the quality of the water that you're using to make those amendments. So yeah, that is basically a nutshell. So we'll move to a case study of a farm that we've been working with. And in this particular instance, working on Boma Road fields. So this is our farm here in Trans Nzoia. As you can see on the picture above, we were putting out a first application of compost extract as we were spraying it out on the 21st of March. That is this year, just when the rains were starting. The picture at the bottom is 3 weeks later. Some patches of the field were really growing out, and as you can see, above knee height. So that was some really rapid transformation. This is 3 weeks again after our first application, and that is when we did second application of the extract. This time we did it as a drench. So basically what you can see at the background there is a tractor pulling water bowser. We had done a batch of about 7,000 liters and used that on a 5-acre field. So the amount of compost that we used for 7,000 liters was about 120 kilos. We had measured out on buckets. So that was 6 buckets of compost, 7,000 liters of extract. So you can start to imagine and do your maths. So this is 6 weeks after that first initial application, the grass now was at waist high. Basically, this grass, I would give it maybe a few weeks or at that point to harvest. We had really good biomass, but the field was on contract for seed production, so we could not harvest it at this point. We had to wait for it to go to seed so that we can harvest the seed. But this was really good grass in just 6 weeks of rain onset. So you can imagine how many harvests you can have in a year when you have such rapid growth. And this was with just 2 applications of compost extract. So this is 8 weeks. Actually, we received this photo while we were doing our microscopy immersion week in Nairobi with Sue. So at this point, you can see the grass. Basically, this guy almost being covered. So very good biomass. Starting to put out flowers and seeds, and those were also doing very well. So at the end of the day, what did we achieve in terms of the harvest compared to a similar period the previous year? We had the 77% yield increase in the number of bales. That is from 130 bales per acre to 210 bales. On the seed, we had a 314% increase on yield. An acre moving from 16 kgs to 66 kgs each. A very significant increase by any account. And you can also see what the average weight of each bale was, 16 kilos. I would appreciate for those who have dealt with grass, commercial grass, you would normally find them weighing much less than this. So to achieve 210 bales of 16 kgs, that was some pretty remarkable performance on that particular grass. Yep. So we'll be moving now to demonstration of the processes of making those amendments, the compost extracts and compost tea.
Yes, hello guys. So we've gone over the theory of making extracts and compost teas, and basically ways of making a little of your compost go a long way. So we are going to be looking at the practical bit of how to do it if you're doing it on a small scale. So probably making a few liters of the extract, say about 20 liters, you could go up to about 200 liters or more depending on the kind of workforce you have. So what we have here is compost. That is 3 types of composts. We have a thermophilic compost mixed with worm castings, or that is a vermicompost, and another method of composting that is a KNF technique, something we call IMO4. So we have those 3 types of composts. in this, and that is what we are going to be using for our extracts today. Apart from the compost, we have some foods here, but basically these ones are added at the end of the process, just when you're applying, if you're doing extracts. But if you are making a compost tea, then you would need to add this at the beginning of the process. We have a fish hydrolysate. Basically, this is a macerated fish that has been fermented over a few months. And this is a humic acid that is extracted from our vermicompost systems, and lactic acid bacteria. Now, depending on what your goals are or what you're trying to achieve with your compost teas, there are different or many other kinds of foods that you could use to make your compost teas. But now, back to the extract. We are going to make about 20-liter batch. There are many ways that you could do this. I am going to demonstrate my preferred way. So basically, we'll have this bucket and add my compost up to about a tenth of the bucket. So we're just going to eyeball it. Depending again on the quality of the compost, you could require or need to have more or less of the compost. And since we have a fairly or a good quality product, we do not really need to use so much of it. From the little material, we could really extract a good number of microbes. So I'm going to add a little water. I'm going to add a little water to this. And basically stir it to make this thick paste that is a slurry. At this point, I would like to point out that this slurry could also be a useful product in your planting systems. You can use this as a seed dressing. You can use this as a seed dressing, especially when it's done from the vermicompost. You do it for the metabolites in the compost. Basically what that does is that when you put the seed in the ground that has been dressed with the vermicompost slurry, the seed begins to sense that it is germinating in a microbially rich environment, and therefore starts to release those exudates, really pumping them early at the growth stages, at the early growth stage. I've noted that seeds and seedlings as well that are dressed with the slurry usually tend to germinate or grow with more vigor than seeds that have not been dressed or treated, even when they are growing in soils that are fairly microbially rich. So basically I try to dislodge as much of the microbes from this compost material as I can at this stage. And once we have this fairly broken down, we will just top up the water to fill this bucket. So at this stage, I will just give it a stir. Maybe filled it a little bit too much. I'll just stir it just to keep on dislodging those microbes from the compost or from the organic material as much as we can. Yeah, so basically that should be done. Fairly little amount of time and very little effort. I have the second bucket that is heated with this sieve, and I'm just going to filter my extract. You're going to have this beautiful dark chocolate color if your compost was done well with lots of air aerobic. Your compost should be fairly like a dark chocolate color. Yep. So here we are, our extract done. So to put this out, you could either drench with a watering can, or you could put it on a knapsack sprayer and apply it onto the soil, and you can as well apply it on plant leaf surfaces. But as we learned earlier, these extracts are mostly used as soil amendments. And at this point, as we also pointed out, you can add your foods if available and if you so wish. So basically, that is the process. It's fairly quick and simple, so you could actually make a fairly large batch that can cover a few tens of acres. Now, coming to this other system, supposing you are doing this on a large scale, you're doing probably tens, 50s, hundreds of acres. That process may prove to be quite laborious and probably tedious. So if you could have equipment, we have this IBC tot that is 1,000 liters with an aeration system, a pump that is at the back end. So basically we have these buckets that are fitted with this mesh and with holes. So the aeration systems will be pumping air into these buckets. These buckets are going to be holding our compost. So we'll fill, or rather we'll half fill these buckets with the compost and then run the machine. Depending on the quality also again of the compost, how much is going to be needed will be really dependent on the quality of your finished compost. So let's just add this compost. What I normally do, supposing I want to make more than 1,000 liters of this, is I would do a very concentrated batch and then dilute that. With water that is without the extract, to achieve whatever quantity I wish. So there we are. Putting out the compost. So we have air pumping from these pipes and from the bottom part of the tank on the other side. We have this control valve that would measure out how much air is coming here and how much air is coming from the bottom. The bottom is important because it pumps the water up. The water has no choice than to move this way forward and then fill in the vacuum that is being created at the bottom, and therefore we have a vortex kind of motion. We have that water cycling. So we'll just put on the pump and let's see how it runs. These vents really agitating the compost, and we have the other side pumping the air and rotating it. So at this point we could add on more compost. We run this pump for about 20 to 30 minutes. If at that point we feel like we need to do more extraction, I'll just take this out, empty the contents that will have been left back and fill it with more compost and then run the machine once more. can see the water changing color. So we are actually getting a good extraction. So at this point I will switch off the pump. That is basically the gist of it. I will let this one sit. I will probably need to do further extraction later on for application in the fields. As I pointed out, the difference between now the extract and the compost tea is the foods and the amount of time that you need to grow. With compost tea, we will need to have at least 24 hours to 36 hours, depending on what we are trying to grow. And also, the kind of foods that we use will determine also what we end up growing. Yeah, so that is basically it. You can do it on a fairly large scale. You can do it on a smaller to medium scale without necessarily requiring to have this kind of equipment. If anyone needs this equipment, I have done everything here by myself, including a modification for the pump. So if this is something that anyone would be interested in, you can feel free to